welcome to our HEB virtual cooking class. My name's Brandy. I'm from your local HEB over there at 1604 and Belverde. Forgot where I go to work. We also have with us today Chef Charlotte. How are you doing today, Charlotte?
I'm so great. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited about learning about Texas wines and Texas beer.
I'm super excited to be here too. Thank you for joining us. Charlotte will also be on the chat, so if you have any questions, please feel free to type those in and we'll get to those too. So we're doing Texas beers, Texas wines today. I'm excited. So we're gonna start with the beers first, and we have the lineup for you over here. We also paired with it some HEB pretzels, some HEB trail mix, and just something easy to pair with your beer flight, just like you would have at a brewery if you went for a tasting. So we're gonna get started with that. We're actually gonna do a little beer flight today with our beers. What about you, Charlotte? When you go to a brewery, do you like to get a flight? You get a full glass? What do you do?
So honestly, I mean, I like to do flights. I like a variety. So yeah.
I love a beer flight. Then you can kind of choose a little bit of everything off the menu, and then you pick your favorite and revisit that. So we're going to do that today. We have nice glasses, a nice open glass so you can really get in there and smell the beer while you're tasting it. We also have our kitchen and table glasses available as well. And just like wine, beer has their own specific glasses. To do with the aroma, maybe the alcohol percentage, they would have a different glass for each beer.
So to like help you enjoy like the full
tasting experience.
Okay,
exactly.
So when we do a flight, typically how many beers would you drink, or would you
like 3 to 4.
Okay.
So we're gonna do 3 today, kind of keep it simple. Our first one, I always like to start with something that's not that's more familiar to most of people's taste buds. So we're gonna start with the Altstadt Kolsh. They're out of Fredericksburg, Texas, and they have a beautiful facility. You should all go visit them. They have state-of-the-art equipment. It's absolutely gorgeous there. They have a full restaurant, and this is their award-winning Kolsch beer. It's a German-style beer, really light and crisp. So if you're used to drinking just domestic beers, like one of our favorites at home is Coors Banquet, this is going to be a fuller-bodied experience for you, but still not too off to your palate. So,
okay.
Pretty enjoyable.
And so when you're building a flight, do you typically go lighter, like in flavor, to maybe a darker or a heavier flavor? What is the...
Yeah, you can definitely do that. If you're gonna do lighter to darker, definitely start with the light and go to the dark. You could do a flight of all dark beers, kind of figure that out. Go get with your beer and wine manager, come see me or your local beer and wine manager and ask us to pick something out for you. Maybe you want to do all German beers, or you want to do all IPAs, or you want to do all dark beers, all maybe Guinness.
Okay. And then if I wanted to, so say I wanted to build a flight, but I didn't want to commit to say a whole 6-pack, do I have options? Can I buy single beers?
Yeah, you don't have to commit. We have a Pick 6 program at the store, so you can buy just a single beer. You can build your own 6-pack with a variety of different single beers, so it's perfect for trying things out.
Ooh, I like that.
I do too.
It's like ordering a bunch of appetizers.
Yeah.
I want variety. I
exactly.
like it.
And if you don't see something in the Pick 6 that you want to try, just come ask us if we can put one in there for you, and we'd be happy to do that.
Very cool.
Yeah. So I just poured the Kolsch out. I'm gonna go ahead and smell it too. A lot of tasting beer is involved in both the taste and the smell. So when you go to a wine tasting, you normally see us taste it and spit out the wine. But for the beer, while you're doing your tasting along with us, go ahead and swallow it, and then you're gonna taste it again as you breathe those notes out your mouth. So you'll taste it going down, and then also as you breathe through the taste of that beer. And this one has a nice malty finish on it. The malt kind of gives it that a little bit of breadiness on the end, but it also has some crisp characteristics as well. So really, really refreshing and excellent example of a German Kolsch.
And that's from Fredericksburg?
Yes.
That makes
Fredericksburg,
sense.
Texas. Yeah. And it's an ale beer. So talking about types of beer, do you know how many types of beer there are? Maybe put it in the chat. Guess how many types of beer, because we have a lot of variety at HEB.
I actually know the answer to this because I went to rehearsal.
Okay.
And I'm not going to say it. But I was today years old when I found out. Oh, let's see. Giovanna says like 100 question mark, and then someone else said 30 question mark.
Okay, perfect. I love those guesses. So we were actually on a trip and we were touring a very famous brewery over in Boston. You can probably guess which one. And the tour guide said, how many types are there? And all those answers is what he got. 100, too many to count. And my husband tapped me on the shoulder like, go ahead, tell him the answer. And I was like, 2. There's only 2. So the 2 types of beer have to do with the yeast that they use to make the beers. So there's ale yeast and lager yeast. So all the styles would fall under those 2 types, but actually only 2 types, so pretty interesting. Now you can be a rock star at your next brewery tour.
Like
you'll know the answer.
trivia night.
So next we're gonna move on to our Real Ale Fresh Kicks. Real Ale is a great brewery out in Blanco, Texas. They're turning 25 years old this year. Happy anniversary of Real Ale. This is their Hazy IPA, Fresh Kicks. And you're gonna see what I mean by hazy when we pour it into the glass.
So we talked about this earlier during our little rehearsal. I'm not an IPA fan.
Yeah.
So
my husband isn't either. And a lot of people think to be a craft beer drinker, you have to love IPAs. It's not always the case, but I'm gonna guarantee you like this one. So hazies or juicy IPAs, they're gonna have more fruit characteristics that's gonna cut back on some of those hoppy notes that you kind of are put off by.
yeah.
So this is gonna have juicy flavors, fruit, pineapple, melon, and it just kind of rounds out the beer. And can you see that color? How hazy it is? You can't even see through it as compared to the Kolsch.
Brandy, we have a question. One of the viewers wants to know if all IPAs are bitter.
No. They will have some bitterness to them because hops are a main component of that. In fact, they actually list the bitterness unit, or the IBUs. You might see that on some of your packages, and that just lists how bitter the beer is. Yeah. So this one's a 40 on that scale.
Okay.
But not all bitter, but definitely stick to a hazy or a juicy if you're just starting out in IPAs or if you want to try them. My husband's also not a fan either, Charlotte, like you, but when we did this flight at home, this was his favorite one. So
okay.
We'll see.
All right. I'll
try
anything.
Okay, great. All right. So we're going to move on to our Freetail pickle beer. So if there's one phrase that I've heard more in 2020 than all the other ones we heard is, do you have any pickle beer? The customers have been asking for it. We have it, okay? We have Freetail pickle beer. It's very popular. They're using cucumber, celery seed, salt, pepper to brew in this to get that classic pickle flavor. They're also adding pickle juice at the end of the brewing process. It is a sour Gose.
Okay, I'm so glad you're saying Gose because I've been saying this wrong. So I'm.
We heard goose, Gose,
yeah.
Gose. It's just Gose.
So tell us about that style of beer.
So it's also going to fall under that ale category. And even though your mind is prepared to taste something sour, it is kind of a shock to your palate at first, but keep trying it. Charlotte brought up earlier, there's lambics, or like a classic example of sour beers. But sour beers are like the new IPA, trending in the store. Everyone's asking for them. Gose could be as traditional as just tasting like a dressed beer. You know how we'd put the salt and the lime on our beer? It could just be a salt and lime Gose. It could be a fruited Gose. In this case, we have our pickle Gose. So something a little adventurous.
So, ooh, someone asked if that pickle beer would be good in a Bloody Mary.
It's excellent in Bloody Marys. In fact, that's in micheladas, Bloody Marys. It pairs great with barbecue. we can kind of talk through some of the pairings. Also, you notice like a little bit how I poured the beers in. Don't be afraid to just pour it straight in the glass, right into the center. And you're gonna see a lot of that carbonation come up, but that's okay because you know what? The more carbonation that goes into the glass, the less goes into your belly.
So I have a question. I'm very curious, and I'm glad to know that you pour it like that, because when you see someone pour a beer tableside or at a bar perhaps, like they tilt the glass, is that for our dining, like our, like, so
yeah,
we
you
don't
can
get,
tilt the glass slightly as long as you're pouring fast and hard down into the center.
Okay.
Yeah.
I always thought it so you didn't get all that head on top of the beer. Like that's what I just assumed it was.
Yeah, if you get a little bit more head than you want, it'll slowly go down.
Yeah.
Like these have already gone down, so you don't need to worry about that. And I'd rather have it in the glass than have that bloated beer feeling. So
I'm with you.
yeah. But a little bit of pairing. We just did nuts and pretzels today, just an easy, fun idea, but you can also go a little heavier with the Kolsch. It's German style, so we're thinking bratwurst, we're thinking pretzels, things like that. With the IPA, I love this with Thai food or something spicier. It's also great with fried chicken. So any kind of fried food, the hops and that will really cut through those flavors. And then our pickle beer, like the wise person on our chat mentioned, Bloody Marys, micheladas, and barbecue for sure. And
Okay.
give it a try.
I have one more, and this is a personal question.
Yeah.
Is there like an optimal like temperature to drink beer? Like what is the best temperature your beer should be?
You don't want to get it too cold because then you'll lose a lot of the flavor, similar to wine.
Okay.
But we like to have them around chilled to room temperature.
Okay.
Yeah, like around 60 degrees or so. Yeah, just out of the fridge. We tend to chill things really, really cold here. We'll see even restaurants advertise that they have that like ice cold beer.
Yeah, I'm like ice cold. That's what I'm thinking.
However you like to drink it, it's fine. But
That's the answer I
you'll
like.
lose a little bit of the flavor if you get
Okay.
anything too cold. So let me just move those beers out of the way. Any other questions in the chat about beer?
You know what? We do have one more question, and we had a viewer ask, does the glass really matter?
The glass, so we use these glasses, and why I like this is just because it has a big open surface. So when I'm tasting this, I can get my whole, don't worry about looking weird when you're tasting things, by the way, just like get your whole face in it. Almost your nose should be like touching the top of the beer because you really want to experience all those flavors, whether you're just breathing it in or tasting it. So just really get in there and have one with a big open. We used, for our flight, we use bigger shot glasses. We always have shot glasses laying around, or these big water glasses work nice too. But there are specific beer glasses for each style of beer. But in this case, works out.
So it's kind of like if all you have is a mason jar, then a mason jar works. But if
Red Solo cup, whatever you got to do, you know?
Right? I love it.
Okay, cool. So we're going to move on to wines. We have first up our McPherson Viognier. So an easy way to remember how to pronounce this grape is VNA. So just easy to say. If you're looking for something similar to a Chardonnay or a Pinot Grigio, and you want to come up to me and be like, Brandy, I'm tired of Chardonnay, I'm tired of Pinot Grigio, I want something different. But I still wanted to have those pear flavors, that honeysuckle, and a little bit of acidity on the finish, then this is something that I would recommend you try. So let's open this up. And we have a screw cap, which is fine. We talked about that earlier too. It doesn't matter if it's a screw cap or a cork. It doesn't devalue the wine to have that. It actually keeps it really fresh, and you won't get any corked wine that way either.
We have a question in the chat, and someone wants to know about the oakiness of this wine. Is there any oakiness in it?
It's not aged in oak, it's actually aged in stainless steel, so you're not going to get that oakiness like you would if you're a big fan of those oaky, buttery Chardonnays. A little more tropical fruits on this one and a little bit brighter in flavor. So a nice color on that as well. Oh, you really smell like orange blossom and honeysuckle. It smells really good. So,
I mean, you're really like just sold that to me big time, and I'm like reaching over to grab
I know,
that.
like, so thirsty. But yeah, very nice choice. The McPherson family has been making wine in Texas for over 40 years. They're pretty much considered to be like the godfather of wine in Texas. So they've done a lot for Texas wines. They also believe in using Texas grapes and using things that grow well in our soil and really represent Texas. So we really appreciate that. And you get a nice flavor of their wines.
So do they have a tasting room?
They do have a tasting room. Their tasting room up in Lubbock is actually an old converted Coke factory. It's really cool. If you get a chance to go up there, it's really beautiful. They also have a little tasting room that they share with a couple other vineyards in Fredericksburg too, so you can find them up there as well, a little bit closer to home.
So it's not just Texas Tech and Lubbock. There's McPherson wine.
There's other things up there. You can take a drive. So next we're gonna talk about a red wine, and you'll notice the glass got a little bit bigger. That's intentional. With a white wine, usually a little smaller glass and a little narrower at the top so that the aroma gets caught there at the top and you can really smell all the flavors. With a red wine glass, you want it to be a little bit bigger because it has more tannins that need air to really breathe and open up. I know we've decanted some wines in the past, so you can do that too. Go ahead and decant it or just open up the bottle a little before you're ready to drink it so it gets a chance to breathe.
So can I ask you a question about
sure.
opening up the bottle of wine?
Yeah.
So I noticed that you used like a foil cutter, and then you just took off the very top that covers the cork. Can you take the whole foil off? Like, what is the proper etiquette of that?
Usually it's best to use a foil cutter, but my husband like literally grabs it with his hand and pulls it off before I can get to him with the foil cutter, like, use this. But it's gonna make pulling the cork out a lot easier if you cut that foil first, so that's what I recommend.
I've seen it done all sorts of different ways. I've seen people like cut the whole thing off or just leave the part around the neck.
Yeah. So this is William Chris Vineyards. It's actually two friends, Bill or William and Chris. They got together with all their years of experience in viticulture here in Texas and making wine, and they opened up the William Chris Vineyards. And this is their Skeleton Key Cabernet. And they believe in real Texas wine. So this is, again, all Texas fruit, Texas made and bottled here in Texas. And they have a tasting room up in Fredericksburg as well. So beautiful color, nice and dark and rich. You get smokiness. It's like smoked raspberries. It's really, really pretty. You can smell the fruit and that little bit of smokiness. When I tasted it, it had a nice leathery tannin finish. Didn't linger too long, but this can definitely stand up to your steaks, your rich pastas, or anything like that.
Hunter Burden asked if this is a good barbecue wine.
Of course it is. It's also a good wine with Netflix and your couch. It's good with everything. But it pairs with a lot of, richer foods, heartier foods. It can stand up to it, or you can just enjoy a glass, for sure. Good question, Hunter. Thank you. Love that.
I have a question.
Yep.
For you, this is a personal question as well. So if I open up a bottle of Cab like that, can I put the cork back in it, put it in the fridge? How long do I have once I open up?
Yeah, so you only have a couple days before the wine starts to turn a little bit vinegary, and you're gonna lose a little bit of flavor. Sometimes wines are great the next day though, so don't get me wrong, you can definitely pull it open the next day. You might get a completely different experience actually once especially for red, once the tannins have come in contact with the air. Some wines I've had are better the next day, but I wouldn't go much past that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure it really won't be a problem.
All right, so our third wine that we have is a Lost Maples Rosé Muscat Canelli. And you might be thinking, Muscat Canelli, that sounds familiar. It's kind of like that friend that comes up to you and they're like, hey, and you're like, hi, I know you, but where? This is like the Moscato. So everybody's heard of Moscato. It's going to be sweet, sparkling. This one's not sparkling, but it's going to be sweet and have that nice fruitiness to it. I'm going to pour it in the glass here. This you would also serve chilled. I can already smell it. Wow. It's got beautiful pear. Again, that honeysuckle, raspberry. That smells good. I did get a chance to try this as well, and on the finish, it's not sweet, sweet, sweet. So if you're looking to move on past Moscato and you want something just a little less sweet than Moscato, this might be a good option for you. It still has all those sweet notes, the fruitiness, but just a little less sweetness on the finish. So
Really quickly before you move on,
Yeah,
we have a couple of questions about
Perfect.
the storage of the wine. So like if you open it,
Yeah.
how long do you have? So does the storage like 1 to 2 days for all varietals? And then someone had a really interesting question about the time frame for keeping a bottle if you use one of those like expanding corks or like an air, like a rubber expanding cork or something that would prevent the air.
that
coming.
helps. Whites last a little bit longer in the fridge. The reds tend to go bad, like I said, in a couple days. That's literally where they came up with sangria, right? So the wine's starting to go bad in a couple days. You didn't drink it, so they put it with a bunch of fruit to help enhance the flavors again and make it taste good. But yeah, just a couple of days. That we also have a product that you can request at HEB called a Corvin. And if you're not going to drink a whole bottle of wine, this is a good investment for you. It has a little needle that goes through the cork and just pours out the one glass. And then literally the bottle goes back on your shelf undisturbed. So then the bottle will be good for years. So that's what I would recommend for that.
And we have those?
We do. Yeah, they're called Corvin. So get with your beer and wine manager and they can get you one of those.
Okay.
Yeah. Awesome.
So I want to go back to, I cut you off in the middle of the rosé. So you said it's not as sweet as say like a Moscato d'Asti, and that one's not sparkling, right?
Yes, this is not sparkling. It's not as sweet on the finish. It does have all those sweet notes that you're looking for in your wine, but it's just not as sweet on the finish. So it reminded me of maybe a more of a German style wine, like a Riesling or a Gewürztraminer. That kind of finish on it is what I got.
Is this the one that you referred to as the porch pounder?
This is the porch pounder. This is a crowd pleaser. It's going to be really, really refreshing in the summer. As far as pairings go, I would pair that with a great cheesecake with maybe some strawberries on it, or a fruit salad, fruit plate, charcuterie board. Anything like that is going to be delicious.
Maybe with a little sparkling, you can make a little spritzer.
Yeah, totally. You can have it then for brunch.
Then you can just drink longer.
And it's always an all day rosé all day for sure. Then.
Man, look how beautiful.
Do we have any
and
other
then
comments in the
I
chat?
have one more question. Yes.
Okay.
So when you're drinking the pairing the flight for the wine, you would you drink them in that order? So it would be the white, the red, and then...
Yeah, so you usually want to start out with the white and then go to your red, just because your palate tends to get overwhelmed by the red wine. So you want to start with the white, then go to the red, and then finish with your dessert wine is usually how we would set up a tasting. So good question.
And then how many, so for doing a wine flight, how many would you do in a tasting? Like what's a good amount?
I would do, again, 3 to 4. That way you get a good taste. Your palate doesn't get too overwhelmed by all the flavors that you're introducing to it. And then I like to do what's called revisiting my favorites. So that means you go back and get a full glass of the one you like the best. So that would make a perfect flight for me.
We do that like when we order food.
Exactly.
I do that when I order food. I'm like, we're going to go ahead and get one more of those. Bring that around.
Bring that around one more time. So it was so great hanging out with you, Charlotte. I really loved exploring all these Texas beers and wines. Come by and see me. Come by and see your HEB beer and wine manager for some great recommendations to make your own beer flight or try out some Texas wines.
Thank you so much. I learned so much about how to set up a flight. This was very cool. Thanks for having me.
It was very fun. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. And make sure to tune into our next class. Just go to heb.com/classes to sign up for our next one. This class will also be posted onto YouTube in a couple days. So if you want to revisit it or not miss the next one, then go ahead and hit subscribe and the notification bell and you won't miss a thing. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.